Hey everyone, this is Eric. I'll go ahead and say Pastor Eric, because I'm a human being too. Just want to wish you all a good Sunday morning, and I hope everyone's going to find their way to church if they can. I'm still hoping to find one. Um, this is a response to Sunny Listening's comment that she doesn't see how UFC is emblematic of our culture. First of all, do we even have a culture? I'm serious. There was a time that there was a distinctly American culture, and people wanted to be a part of it. And now we got all these immigrants pouring in who don't want to be a part of our culture. They're here for one purpose, and that's to hijack our culture and turn it into the culture they came from. Now, I had people ask all the time, I see it on X all the time, why are they doing this? Why? They came here for a better life, this, that, and the other. No. I shared a video that Muslims don't move outside of their area unless they're in a state of war. And Islam is in a state of war with the West. And this is a war of conquest. And there's another video I shared. Basically, it is migration, population, domination. Okay? Migration, you get a high enough population, eventually have domination. If you want to see that process at work and evidence of it at work, I've got one name for you. Ilhan Omar, and number two, Rashida Tlaib. If it wasn't for the migration and the population, we wouldn't have the domination manifested by these two women, because Americans wouldn't have voted for them. But you get a whole bunch of foreigners, a big mass of them, and bring them over like Obama did, plant them in Minneapolis, St. Paul area like he did. You start to take over the electoral map. Ilhan Omar was a test run that worked. So they're trying to do this around the country. So it's and the very people who are championing this and who are getting behind it are people like Sonny and the rest of the View and all the other people who've got their talking points from places like Davos and Bohemian Grove. This is what you are to say. This is what you are to believe. This is what you are to propagate in the name of the world consciousness, or whatever the heck they're calling it these days. Revelation has another word for it, but you knew I was going to get the Bible in there somewhere, didn't you? So let's talk the inner part of Sonny Houston, Liston, whatever. Not that important. I don't even remember her name half the time. Her second, but Sonny's second point. Not emblematic to our culture. Okay, let's talk about the emblematic part. Talk about the culture part, okay? Our unique identity as Americans, as a culture, and this, that, and the other, which every other nation has, we're not allowed to have. We're supposed to adapt to everybody else's. Now, we are a melting pot. American culture is an amalgamation and a blending of it together of a lot of their cultures into one culture. E pluribus unum. Latin for out of many, one. I love that. E pluribus unum. Out of many, one. Notice the unity, right? The unity. But now we're not a melting pot. We are a salad bowl. Because everybody gets to stay separate. We don't get to unite. We don't get to come together. We're just little separate little enclaves because we're easier to conquer that way, people. Look at the way communists freaking did what they did in Europe. You turn the working class against the merchant class and this class against that class, and they're all fighting each other, and then the Bolsheviks come in and they just dominate everybody. And then you got these people who are the UIs, who are these useful idiots that the powers that want to take us over are using. And it happens in every country. It happened in Soviet Russia. It happened in China. What you do with all these people? You put them out in the farms and say it's for the sake of the collective, and you work them to death because you don't want any more destabilization. Why? You're in charge. Everybody wants destabilization until, they get a foothold, they get in charge, and then they want to get rid of the destabilizers. And what is that? Well, the young left-wing idiots that basically fell for the lies, because he who stands for nothing will fall for anything. People were more knowledgeable of this, a lot of this crud, and applying this. I'm reading the book of Ezra right now, and it talked about Ezra being a man who studied the law, practiced the law, taught the law, okay? Studied it, practiced it, taught it. Pastors should do things in that. We study God's word, we practice God's word, and then we impart God's word, okay? That's what we're supposed to do. Problem is, thanks to a concerted effort by the adversary with all of his minions, people are, including inside what's supposed to be called the church, are illiterate of this. Sonny, you want to know what's emblematic of American culture and has been? This book right here. You talk about emblematic of culture. I bet you don't think this book's part of it, do you? You don't know American culture. So don't be speaking to it. That's what bothers me. You got all these people who don't really give a rat's fat rear end about American culture unless it can become a talking point and some kind of fulcrum or pry bar to pry freaking people apart from each other in the name of the great freaking owl. You know that big freaking statue of an owl they got there in the Bohemian Grove? They all stand around in robes and freaking burn incense and crap too. Sonny's probably been there a few times. So, indicative. Boom. God's word, God's ways. That's indicative true American culture. Take a look at our founding documents. You read the letters of the founding fathers. Boom. Boom. That is indicative American culture. Now, you look at UFC. Now, I'm not a huge fan of the UFC myself. Me personally, I'm not into watching guys beat the living crud out of each other. But UFC is emblematic of what's known as the warrior spirit, the fighter, right? The very UFC itself, the way it started, very humble, small beginnings. It got some help from people like Donald J. Trump. But it's risen to prominence. That's America, okay? The UFC's rise is very similar to the arc of America in the sense that start off really small and struggling, need a little help from other people, France, back when we were really good friends, and look where we fell from. We used to be a really great country. Our president's trying to help us get there again. But that fighting spirit, that never say die, you aren't going to pin me down kind of spirit is at the backbone of the American spirit. We're a nation of fighters. We are. Japan rued invading this country because back in the 1930s, 1940s, it was a vastly different place in the sense that they come here, they get a fight. They come here, they would get a fight, and a very brutal one because, it actually was attributed to Yamamoto, but I guess he didn't really say it, and that is that there's a gun behind every blade of grass. In other words, we invade, we're going to pay for it severely because Americans will fight back. That UFC warrior spirit, Sonny, is indicative to our culture. Just what we're fighting for has changed, and that's a shame. Instead of fighting for what's right, righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. We used to fight for that. So there's certain things that Muslims get right. We have become a world exporter of corruption. We have. They nailed that one right on the head. Listen, they're not wrong about everything, okay? Just about the biggest key parts of how you're going to get saved and exactly who Jesus is, which is kind of everything. But we went from being the number one exporter of the gospel. Once again, Sonny, you want to see emblematic? The Holy Bible is emblematic of true American culture. Number one exporter of the gospel to number one exporter of pornographic material. And we wonder why we're struggling. So, circling back around. Sonny, the UFC in many ways is very emblematic of our culture. If you really cared, but you don't. It's a talking point. It's copy they put in your hands and you read. It's the way you keep your card in the world establishment. You spout the stuff they tell you to spout. That's why every single one of you on every single channel of every single show sounds almost identical. It's because you all get the same copy to read. Well, I ain't drinking the Kool-Aid, sweetheart, and neither is a lot of us. Because we do believe in that which is emblematic to our culture. All right. Hopefully that puts some light on the situation. I hope everyone has a good Sunday, and thank you for your time and patience and listening.